Our 3 channels are responsible for helping more than 300 hungry and homeless children in Africa, impacting more than 8 countries. We don't ask for money, we just ask that you like, subscribe, watch the video until the end, and share it, as you will be helping us with our project. May God be present in your life. My name is Antonia, I'm 68 years old, and today I'm going to tell you a story that completely changed my life. A story of abandonment, family betrayal, and a miracle that few would believe if I hadn't experienced it firsthand. For 3 consecutive days, I was locked inside my own home, without a crumb of food, without a penny in my pocket, abandoned by my own son. But what happened on the 4th day was something that defied all laws of logic, and made me believe that Our Lady never abandons her children. If you believe in miracles, or if you're going through difficult times and need hope, stay until the end of this story, because what I'm about to tell you will touch your heart in a way you never imagined. My story begins 2 years ago, when I still lived alone in my simple little house in the Vila Santos neighborhood, here in São Paulo. It was a humble but dignified life. I received my pension of 2 minimum wages, the result of 40 years working as a janitor in public schools. It wasn't much, but it was enough to live with dignity. I had 3 children, Maria Jose, who lives in the countryside with her family, João Pedro, who moved on to another state, and Carlos Eduardo, the youngest, who was always the closest to me. Carlos was 35 years old, had been unemployed for over a year, and kept saying he was looking for work, but never found any. For months, I helped my son as best I could. I paid his cell phone bills, bought medicine when he called in sick, and there was always a plate of food left on my table for him. He was my son, right? A mother never abandons her child. But things started to get strange when Carlos started showing up at home accompanied by friends I'd never seen before. Men with surly faces, who spoke quietly among themselves and always seemed to be up to something. When I asked who they were, Carlos would respond evasively, "They're just some friends, Mom. People who can get me a job." I believed him because I wanted to. Because when a mother loves her son, she always wants to see the best in him, even when all signs point to the contrary. The situation began to deteriorate at the beginning of this year. Carlos started visiting my house daily, but no longer like a loving son visiting his mother. He would arrive in a hurry, rummaging through my things, and always asking about my retirement. "Mom, don't you want me to help manage your money? I can make some investments, multiply that money," he would say, with a smile that no longer reached his eyes. I always refused, because although I wasn't very educated, I wasn't stupid. I knew my money was sacred, it was my livelihood, my security. But Carlos insisted, and over time, his insistence became more aggressive. One day, he came home accompanied by 2 men I had never seen before. They were tall, dressed in expensive clothes, but with a look in their eyes that gave me chills. Carlos introduced me as his partners in a new business. "Mom, these are the guys who are going to help me start a company. But I need some seed money. Could you lend me about 5,000 reais? It's just for a few months, then I'll pay it all back with interest." 5,000 reais was almost my entire emergency fund, money I'd been saving for years, penny by penny. I said I couldn't afford it, that I needed that money for medical emergencies and other necessities. Carlos's reaction startled me. He slammed his fist on my kitchen table and yelled, "You've never done anything for me. You've always been selfish. Now that I have a chance to improve my life, you're sabotaging me." The 2 men merely watched the argument, but their gaze on me changed. It was no longer indifference. It felt like a veiled threat. In the following weeks, Carlos intensified the pressure. He showed up at my house almost every day, always with the same talk about money. But now, his visits were accompanied by small cruelties. He began criticizing my home, saying I lived like a destitute and that I should make better use of my money. He rummaged through my closets, opened my drawers, and constantly commented on how I accumulated useless things. One day, I found him rummaging through my dresser, where I kept some important documents. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was organizing my things. "Mom, you need help managing your life. You're becoming forgetful and disorganized. How about I take care of your finances? It would be better for everyone." I refused again, but I noticed something had changed in my son's behavior. He was no longer the Carlos I knew. There was a coldness in his eyes, a calculation that frightened me. At this time, I began to pray more intensely. Every night, I knelt before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida that stood in my living room and asked for protection. I asked for wisdom to deal with my son and strength to resist the pressures he was experiencing. "Our Lady," I said, "protect my son from evil paths and give me the strength to do what is right." If you're enjoying this story and want to see more content like this, which shows how faith can transform the most difficult situations, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. A situação chegou ao limite uma terça-feira do mês passado. Carlos apareceu casa mais cedo que o normal, por volta das 10 da manhã, acompanhado dos mesmos dois homens de sempre. Mas dessa vez, eles não vieram para conversar. A gente precisa resolver essa situação hoje, diz Carlos, com uma voz que eu nunca tinha ouvido antes. Era fria, determinada, quase cruel. Dos homens se sentou na minha poltrona sem pedir licença, enquanto o outro fica de pé, encostado na parede, observando. Carlos puxou uma cadeira e se sentou bem na minha frente. "É assim, Dona Antônia," disse o homem da poltrona. "Seu filho nos teve uma grana. Bastante grana. E ele nos diz que a senhora ia ajudar ele a quitar essa dívida. Senti o chão fugir dos meus pés. Que dívida? Carlos, do que esse homem está falando? Meu filho desviou olhar. Eu me meti algumas paradas. Precisei de dinheiro emprestado para uns negócios. E agora preciso pagar. "Quanto?" perguntei, já temendo a resposta. 20.000 reais, respondeu o homem da poltrona, com uma calma assustadora. 20.000 reais. Era mais de 10 vezes o valor da minha aposentadoria. Era impossível. Eu não tinha essa quantia, e mesmo que tivesse, seria loucura entregar para aqueles homens. Eu não tenho esse dinheiro, diz, tentando manter a voz firme. E mesmo que tivesse, não é minha responsabilidade pagar as dívidas do meu filho. O clima na sala mudou instantaneamente. O homem que estava de pé se aproximou, e o que estava sentado se inclinou para a frente. "Dona Antônia, a senhora não está entendendo a situação", disse o homem da poltrona. "Seu filho assinou contrato conosco. E no contrato, ele colocou esta casa como garantia. Meu mundo derrubou naquele momento." Olhei para Carlos, procurando algum sinal de que aquilo era mentira, mas six apenas culpa e desespero seus olhos. "Carlos, me diz que isso não é verdade", supliquei. E ele abaixou a cabeça. Eu não tinha escala. Eles disseram que era só uma formalidade, que eu ia conseguir pagar antes do prazo. Comecei a tremer. Minha casa, o único bem que eu tinha no mundo, estava sendo usada como garantia de uma dívida que eu nem sabia que existia. The man in the armchair took some papers from his pocket and placed them on the coffee table in my living room. "Look, Mrs. Antonia. Everything's in order. Your son signed, notarized, everything's legal. The house is ours if the debt isn't paid by the end of the month." I took the papers with trembling hands. They were documents I couldn't quite understand, but I could see Carlos's signature on several pages. And worse, I also saw a copy of my house deed. "How did you get the deeds to my house?" I asked, looking at Carlos. He didn't answer, but I already knew the answer. I remembered all the times I'd found him going through my things, organizing my papers. "But you can easily solve this," the man continued. "You have a good retirement, you can take out a loan, use your FGTS, severance indemnity fund, sell a few things. 20,000 reis is nothing for someone who has a house like that." Was it nothing? 20,000 reis was practically my entire financial life. It was my security, my peace of mind, my future. "What if I don't get that money?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Then the house becomes ours, and you'll have to find another place to live," the other man replied, speaking for the first time in the entire conversation. I looked at Carlos, expecting him to intervene, to say something in my defense. But he just remained silent, staring at the floor. "Carlos, are you willing to get me out of my own house?" I asked, my voice breaking. He looked up for the first time. "Mom, if you help me now, I promise I'll never get into trouble again. Everything will be fine." But I no longer believed my son's promises. After the men left, Carlos stayed with me for a few more minutes. I expected some word of comfort, some apology, some sign that he recognized the gravity of what he had done. But instead, he became even colder. "Mom, you have a week to get the money. I suggest you find a broker to arrange the payroll loan today. The longer you wait, the worse it will get. Carlos, how could you do this to me? I raised you, loved you, helped you when no one else would." "Life is like that, Mom. Everyone has to get by. You've always been too complacent, too content with little. Maybe this will push you to pursue things." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own son was blaming me for the situation he had created. "If you don't get this money, I'll lose my house," I said, in a last-ditch attempt to appeal to his heart. "You won't lose anything. You'll just have to move. You can rent a smaller, cheaper apartment. It might even be better." At that moment, watching my son speak so coldly about moving me out of the house, I realized I no longer knew him. The Carlos who was there wasn't the boy I'd raised, wasn't the young man I'd helped through every difficult moment. After he left, I was left alone in my living room, clutching the debt papers, trying to understand how my life had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. It was then that I knelt before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida, and cried like I hadn't cried in years. "Our Lady, I don't know what to do anymore. My own son betrayed me, abandoned me. I'm alone, afraid, and have nowhere to go. If you can help me in any way, I beg you." In the following days, I desperately tried to find a solution. I went to the bank to ask about the payroll loan, but discovered that the maximum amount I could get was 15,000 reis, and that would still mean compromising almost my entire retirement pension for the next 5 years. I called my daughter, Maria Jose, in the countryside, and explained the situation. She was outraged at Carlos, but she couldn't help me financially. She was going through her own difficulties, with an unemployed husband and 2 young children. João Pedro, my middle son, was living in Rio Grande do Sul and couldn't help me either. Furthermore, He had never had a very close relationship with me. I found myself completely alone, with no one to turn to. During those days, Carlos continued to show up at home, but now no longer as a son. He came as a debt collector. He asked if I had gotten the money yet, if I had been to the bank, if I had spoken to anyone who could lend me money. "Mom, the deadline is running out. You need to get moving," he said, showing no compassion for my situation. One day, he came home and said there was good news. "Mom, I talked to the guys, and they agreed to make a deal. If you can come up with 10,000 reis by Friday, they'll pay off the debt and return the house deeds." 10,000 reis was still an impossible amount for me, but it was better than 20,000. I pursued every possibility. I tried to bring forward my retirement. I looked for loan sharks, who charged absurd interest. I even considered selling some furniture from the house. But when Friday came, I had only raised 3,000 reis, selling some jewelry that was my mother's inheritance. If you're following this story and feel that Our Lady has already performed a miracle in your life, leave a comment sharing your experience and subscribe to the channel to strengthen our community of faith. When Carlos learned I'd only managed to get 3,000 reis, his reaction was pure irritation. "That's it, Mom? You've had a whole week." "Carlos, I've tried everything. I even sold your grandmother's jewelry. I have nothing left to sell. I can't get any more loans." "Then you didn't try hard enough," he said, with a cruelty that broke my heart. That day, Carlos left the house saying he was going to resolve the situation with the creditors. He said he'd be back on Sunday to give me a final answer. The weekend was the longest of my life. I spent Saturday and Sunday praying, asking for a miracle, asking for Carlos to return with good news, asking for it all to be just a nightmare. On Monday morning, Carlos showed up at the house accompanied by the usual 2 men. But this time, they brought more people, 2 older men who looked like security. "Mom, unfortunately, the guys didn't accept the 3,000 reis," Carlos said, avoiding looking directly at me. "They want the full amount by today, or they'll take possession of the house." "Carlos, for the love of God, talk to them. Explain that I'm your mother, that I don't have that kind of money." But Carlos remained silent while the man in the armchair spoke. "Ms. Antonia, you have until 6 o'clock this afternoon to bring the 10,000 reis. If you don't, tomorrow morning you'll have to leave the house." "Leave to where? This is my house, it's the only place I have." "That's not our problem, Ms. Antonia. You've had enough time to get organized." I looked at Carlos, pleading with my eyes for him to do something, to stop this from happening. But he looked away and said, "Mom, you can stay at Maria Jose's house for a while, until you get organized." Maria Jose lived 400 kilometers away, in a small town in the countryside. I didn't know anyone there besides her. There was no doctor, no trusted pharmacy, no life there. "Carlos, you're kicking your own mother out of the house," I said, in a last-ditch attempt to appeal to what remained of his humanity. "I'm not kicking anyone out, Mom. The consequences of actions are just like that." After everyone left, I was left alone with a feeling of emptiness I'd never felt before. It was as if my entire life had suddenly lost its meaning. I called Maria Jose and told her everything that was happening. She cried on the phone and said I could stay at her house as long as necessary, but I knew this would only be a temporary solution. She couldn't support me indefinitely. I spent the rest of the day trying to think of alternatives, but my mind was confused, desperate. I couldn't think clearly. Late that afternoon, Carlos returned alone. I thought maybe he'd come to apologize, to say he'd found a solution. But he came with an even crueler proposal. "Mom, I talked to the people, and they made one last offer. If you sign the house transfer today, They'll let you live here for another 3 months, paying a nominal rent. Rent? In my own house. Technically, it wouldn't be your house anymore, Mom. But it would give you time to get organized, look for a place to live. It was unbelievable. My son was proposing that I sign my house over to criminals and still pay rent to live in it. I'm not signing anything, he said, more firmly than he felt. Carlos sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. Then tomorrow morning you'll have to leave. I can't do anything anymore. He left, and I was alone again. But this time, I felt like I was truly alone in the world. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the house, looking at every corner, every piece of furniture, every memento. It was as if I were saying goodbye to my entire life. On Tuesday morning, the men returned. But this time, they were accompanied by a locksmith. "Mrs. Antonia, have you decided what you're going to do?" asked the group leader. "I don't have the money," he said, trying to maintain his dignity. "Then we'll have to ask you to leave." "Leave where?" "I have nowhere to go." "That's not our problem. You've had time to organize yourself." It was then that Carlos appeared. I thought maybe he had come to defend me, to protect me, to do something to prevent this humiliation. But he only came to watch. "Carlos, are you going to let them take me out of here?" I asked, in a last-ditch attempt. "Mom, I warned you it would end like this. You're the one who didn't want to listen." At that moment, I felt my heart shatter. It wasn't just the loss of my home. It was the loss of my son, my family, my dignity. The men gave me half an hour to gather some clothes and personal belongings. I took only the essentials: a few changes of clothes, my medicine, my documents, and the image of Our Lady of Aparecida. As I was leaving the house, carrying a small suitcase, Carlos approached. "Mom, I left 200 reis under your bed. It's for you to pay a pension for a few days, until you can get organized." 200 reis. That's what my son thought I was worth after a lifetime of sacrifices for him. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my suitcase and left the house where I had lived for over 20 years. I left the house without knowing where to go. With 200 reis in my pocket, a small suitcase, and a broken heart. My first reaction was to look for a cheap boarding house where I could stay for a few days while I figured out what to do. I found a place in the city center where they charged 20 reis a day for a tiny, dingy room with a shared bathroom. It was degrading, but it was what I could afford. For the first few days, I was in shock. I couldn't believe my life had changed so drastically. I spent hours lying in bed at the boarding house, staring at the stained ceiling, trying to understand where I had gone wrong as a mother. Had I spoiled Carlos too much? Should I have been harder on him when he was a child? Were the other children right when they said I had always been overprotective of the youngest? These questions rang in my head day and night. By the third day at the boarding house, my money was almost gone. I had to make a decision. Either call Maria Jose and ask for help to move to the countryside, or try to find some way to survive in Sao Paulo. I decided to try to stay in Sao Paulo. This was my city, where I knew the streets, where I had my doctors, my life. Going to the countryside would be like starting over at 68. With only 50 reis left, I had to leave the boarding house and look for even cheaper alternatives. That's how I met Dona Joaquina, a 70-year-old woman who rented a small room in the back of her house for 10 reis a day. It was a tiny space, windowless, with only a single bed and a small closet. But it was clean and safe. Dona Joaquina became my first ally in this new phase of life. She was also retired and understood the difficulties of someone our age. "Daughter," she told me on the first day, Life sometimes puts us in situations we never imagined. But the important thing is not to give up. With rent at 10 reis a day, I needed 300 reis a month just to have a place to sleep. My retirement was still blocked because of the debt Carlos had incurred. I later discovered he had used my information to get loans, and I needed to find a way to earn money. At 68, with no recent work experience, it wasn't easy to find work. I started offering my services as a housekeeper, but competition was fierce, and many people preferred to hire younger women. Dona Joaquina suggested I try selling sweets on the street. You make some homemade sweets and sell them in the square. There are always people looking for a delicious treat, she said. With the last 20 reis I had left, I bought the ingredients to make brigadeiros and beijinhos. I spent the entire night making the sweets in Dona Joaquina's small kitchen. The next day, I went out onto the streets with a tray of sweets, hoping to make some change. Selling sweets on the street was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. Not because of the activity itself, which is dignified and honest, but because of the way some people treated me. Many people walked past me as if I were invisible. Others looked disgusted when I offered them sweets. Some even made nasty comments. Look at that, an old lady selling sweets on the street. Where is this country headed? But I also met kind people. Dona Carmen, who had a vegetable stand at the market, always bought some of my sweets and even recommended me to others. Dona Antonia's sweets are delicious, she would say. Made with so much love. On the best days, I managed to sell my entire crop and earn between 15 and 20 reis. On the worst days, I returned home with almost all of my sweets intact. It was little money, but it was my money, earned with dignity. During this period, I tried several times to contact Carlos, but he had changed his cell phone number. When I managed to speak to him through an acquaintance, he was cold and direct. Mom, you shouldn't have been so stubborn. It's too late to turn back now. That was the last time I spoke to my son. For those who are following this story and believe in the power of prayer, stay with us because the miracle I'm about to share will restore your faith in Our Lady's goodness. During those difficult days, my only constant companion was my faith. Every morning, before leaving to sell sweets, I would kneel before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida and converse with her as if she were a close friend. Our Lady, I would say, I know you are with me, even when all seems lost. Give me strength to carry on. Show me the way. Sometimes, when sadness was overwhelming, I would take my rosary and pray in the square while waiting for customers. People passed by, some looking with curiosity, others with compassion. That's how I met Father Jose, a young priest who passed through the square every day on his way to church. He always greeted people with a genuine smile, and one day he stopped to talk to me. "You're always here with your rosary in hand," he said. "May I ask what drives you to pray so much?" I told Father Jose my story. He listened attentively and compassionately, without judging me or offering empty advice. "Dona Antonia," he said at the end, "you are going through a great trial. But I am sure Our Lady has a plan for you. Remain steadfast in your faith." Father Jose invited me to attend daily Mass at his church. "Come whenever you can," he said. "The house of God is always open, and communal prayer strengthens our faith." I began attending church daily. I would leave home early, attend the 7 o'clock Mass, and then go to the square to sell my sweets. At church, I met other people who were also experiencing difficulties. We formed a small community of mutual support, praying for each other, sharing our anxieties and our hopes. 3 weeks ago, something happened that completely changed the course of my life. I was in the square, as usual, selling my sweets and praying my rosary, when an elegant lady approached. She wore fine clothes, but had a kind look in her eyes. "What beautiful sweets," she said, observing my tray. "Did you make them all yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. They're made with great care," I replied, as I always did. She bought some brigadeiros and beijinhos, but instead of leaving, she struck up a conversation. "Do you sell them here every day?" "Yes, ma'am. It's my livelihood." "May I ask your name?" "Antonia, to serve you." "Nice to meet you, Ms. Antonia. My name is Helena. I work for an events company and I'm always in need of homemade sweets for the parties we organize." My eyes lit up. Could it be that Our Lady was sending me an opportunity? "Would you make sweets to order?" Helena continued. "Of course I would. I make brigadeiros, beijinhos, cajazinhos, cocodas, whatever you need." Helena smiled. "That's great. Look, next week I have a 15th birthday party and I'll need 300 assorted sweets. Would you be willing to make them?" 300 sweets. It was more than I sold in a whole week at the market. "Yes, I will. How much would you pay?" "I'll pay 1 real and a half per sweet. That's 450 reis in total." I nearly fainted. 450 reis all at once. It was more than I earned in a month selling at the market. Helena gave me her phone number, and we arranged to talk the next day to work out the details. When she left, I knelt right there in the market and thanked Our Lady. "Thank you, my most holy mother. You have not abandoned me." I stayed up all night, planning how to make 300 sweets perfectly. I calculated the ingredients, planned the preparation time, and figured out how to package everything. The next day, I called Helena and we worked out all the details. She wanted 100 brigadeiros, 100 beijinhos, and 100 cajazinhos, all beautifully decorated. Payment would be made upon delivery on Friday. With the last 15 reis I had, I bought only part of the ingredients. I would need to sell some sweets during the week to buy the rest. Dona Joaquina, who had been following my struggle from the beginning, offered me her kitchen to work freely. "Daughter, this is your big chance. Let's do everything right." For 3 days, I worked intensely. I would get up at 5 in the morning, make a batch of sweets, go out to sell some in the square to raise money for more ingredients, and then come back and make another batch. Dona Joaquina helped me as best she could, washing dishes, organizing the packaging, and offering suggestions. It was like having a mother by my side at that crucial moment. By Thursday night, everything was ready. 300 perfect little sweets, each lovingly wrapped, arranged on beautiful trays Helena had lent me. When I looked at that production, I cried with emotion. It wasn't just about the money. It was about dignity, about starting over, about not giving up. The delivery was a complete success. Helena was delighted with the quality of the sweets and paid me the 450 reis on the spot. "Ms. Antonia, you exceeded my expectations. The sweets are beautiful and delicious. I'm sure I'll need your services again." When I left the house where the party was held, with the money in my pocket, I had to stop on a street corner to cry with relief and gratitude. It was the first decent money I'd earned since losing my home. With part of that money, I was able to pay off my debt to Ms. Joaquina and still had some left over to buy ingredients to make more sweets to sell at the market. But most importantly, Helena kept her promise. The following week, she called me with another order, and then another, and another. Soon, I no longer needed to sell at the market. I was working exclusively with orders for Helena's company. The money started coming in more regularly, and for the first time in months, I could sleep soundly, knowing I would have enough to cover my expenses. With the success of my first orders, Helena introduced me to other people in the events industry. Soon, I was supplying sweets to several different companies. My small home production in Dona Joaquina's kitchen became insufficient. I needed to better organize myself, buy more equipment, and establish a production routine. Helena, who had become more than a client, she was a true partner, suggested that I formalize the business. "Dona Antonia, you have talent and quality. Why don't you open a CNPJ, Brazilian Corporate Taxpayer Registry, and turn this into a real business. The idea scared me. At 68, I had never owned my own business. I'd always been an employee, always worked for others. But Helena encouraged me. I'll help you with all the paperwork. You just need to keep making these wonderful sweets. That's how, 3 months after losing everything, I became a small business owner. We opened a CNPJ, Brazilian Corporate Taxpayer Registry, organized an ordering system, and established fair prices. Helena handled the administrative and commercial side, and I handled production. It was unbelievable. I, who had been abandoned by my own son, who had slept in a filthy boarding house, who had sold candy on the street, now had my own business. The business grew faster than we imagined. Within 6 months, I was supplying sweets to over 20 event companies. I had hired 2 employees to help me with production, and Mrs. Joaquina had become my unofficial partner, handling the overall organization. I managed to rent a small house, but all my own, where I set up a professional kitchen. It was simple, but clean, organized, and functional. Helena suggested we expand even further, offering not only sweets but also savory dishes for events. Mrs. Antonia, you have a natural talent for cooking. I'm sure your savory dishes would be as good as your sweets. I started experimenting with savory recipes: coccinelle, pastries, pies, cheese bread. It was a new challenge, but I discovered I truly had a talent for cooking. Soon, I was offering a full menu for events: sweets, savory dishes, juices, even simple meals. My monthly revenue had reached a level I never imagined I could achieve at my age. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable, financially secure, and, most importantly, dignified. 8 months after losing my home, I received an unexpected call. It was Maria Jose, my daughter. "Mom, I heard you're okay, that you managed to get back on your feet after that situation with Carlos." "Yes, I am, daughter. Our Lady helped me find a way. Mom, I wanted to talk about Carlos. He's in a very difficult situation." My heart raced. As much as my son had caused me so much suffering, I was still his mother. "What happened?" "He's in jail, Mom. They caught him and those men who were with him. It seems they were involved in a lot of bad things." I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness at knowing my son was in jail, but relief at knowing I had made the right decision not to get involved in those shady dealings. "And my house. The house was confiscated by the police, Mom. It's part of the investigation. But the lawyer said that after the case is over, you can get it back." My house. The house where I had lived for over 20 years, where I had raised my children, where all my memories were. Did Carlos say something to tell me? Maria Jose was silent for a few seconds. "He said that he's sorry, Mom. That he knows he did you a big wrong." After Maria Jose's call, I spent days thinking about Carlos, about forgiveness, about family. I talked to Father Jose about the situation. "Father, I know I should forgive my son, but it's so hard to forget what he did to me." "Dona Antonia," the priest said, "forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or accepting what the person did. Forgiving means freeing your own heart from the weight of resentment. You forgive for your own peace, not to benefit the one who hurt you." His words made sense. I was carrying a resentment that only hurt me. I decided to visit Carlos in prison. It was a difficult and emotional encounter. When I saw him in his prison uniform, thin, with bags under his eyes, I felt sorry for him. "Mom," he said as soon as he saw me, "I didn't expect you to come. I came because I'm your mother, Carlos. No matter what you did, that doesn't change." He cried. For the first time in years, I saw my son truly cry, with genuine repentance. "Mom, I messed up everything. I lost you, I lost my freedom, I lost my dignity. And worst of all, I almost destroyed the life of the person who loved me most in this world. Carlos, what you did to me was terrible. It caused me suffering I never imagined a son could cause a mother. But I forgive you. Why, Mom? After everything I've done. Because I've learned that forgiveness isn't about whether you deserve it or not. It's about not wanting to carry that weight in my heart anymore. From that visit on, I established regular contact with Carlos. It wasn't like before, the trust had been broken and would take a long time to rebuild, but it was a new beginning. He was participating in rehabilitation programs in prison, studying, preparing for his release. He was expected to be in prison for another 2 years. Mom, he told me on one of the visits, when I get out of here, I want to really work. I want to show you that I've changed. Carlos, when you leave, if you've truly changed, there will always be a place for you in my life. But it will be a different place than before. Maria Jose also started visiting me more often. She was proud to see how I had rebuilt myself. Mom, you are an example for all of us. You lost everything and managed to get back on your feet. It wasn't alone, daughter. Our Lady guided me the whole time. João Pedro, my other son, also reconnected. He had learned about the situation through Maria Jose and wanted to reconnect. Slowly, my family was rebuilding, but on more solid and true foundations. If you believe this story is proof of Our Lady's unconditional love for her children, leave your Amen in the comments and share this testimony so that others can also find hope in difficult times. A year and a half after losing my home, I received a call from the lawyer handling Carlos's criminal case. Ms. Antonia, I have good news. The case has been concluded, and you can request the return of your home. It was almost impossible to believe. My home, which I thought I had lost forever, could be returned to me. But, doctor, how is that possible? The house was used as collateral illegally, without your knowledge or consent. Furthermore, it was proven that the documents were obtained fraudulently. You are entitled to full restitution. I spent the following weeks chasing down all the necessary documentation. Helena helped me with the bureaucratic procedures, and Father Jose followed the process, praying with us. When I finally received the keys to my house back, I cried for hours. Everything was badly damaged. The criminals had used the house as a warehouse and meeting place. The walls were dirty, some furniture had been broken, and a foul smell permeated everything. But it was my home. It was where I belonged. With the money I was making from my candy business, I was able to completely renovate the house. Helena suggested I convert part of the house into a larger, professional kitchen to further expand the business. Ms. Antonia, you could have a small candy factory here. Imagine how many events we could cater. The idea was tempting, but I wanted my house to remain my home, not just a workplace. We decided on a compromise. I renovated the laundry area into a semi-professional kitchen, which allowed me to produce more, but kept the rest of the house as my home. The renovation took 3 months. When it was finished, I organized a small housewarming party. I invited Helena, Ms. Joaquina, Father Jose, my employees, and some people who had helped me during difficult times. It was a simple party, but full of meaning. I was celebrating not only my return home, but the entire journey of rebuilding I had experienced. 2 years after starting my small business, I received an unexpected proposal. A large supermarket chain had learned about my work through Helena and wanted me to supply their stores with sweets. Dona Antonia, said the sales manager, your sweets have a homemade quality that our customers love. We'd like to partner with you. It was a huge opportunity, but also a huge challenge. Supplying a supermarket chain would mean producing on a much larger scale. I talked to Helena about the proposal. It's a great opportunity, but also a big risk. Do you feel prepared? Helena, 3 years ago I was selling sweets in the square. If Our Lady brought me here, it's because she has a purpose. We accepted the proposal, but cautiously. We started by supplying just 3 stores, to test our production capacity and market acceptance. Success was immediate. Within 6 months, we were supplying 15 stores in the chain. I had to hire more employees, buy larger equipment, and further professionalize myself. But everything happened gradually and sustainably. On the 3rd anniversary of my new life, I received a visit that deeply moved me. Carlos had been released 6 months earlier and was working as an assistant in a bakery. He had changed a lot. He was thinner, more serious, but with a clearer look in his eyes. "Mom," he said when he arrived at my house, "I came to ask for your blessing for a new project." "What project, son?" "I want to open a small bakery in the neighborhood where I live. I learned a lot about baking in prison, and I think I can make it work." "And what does that have to do with me?" "I want to do everything right this time, Mom. I want you to be my partner. Not a partner in money, because I know I don't deserve your financial trust yet, but a partner in guidance, advice, and experience." I was surprised by the proposal. Carlos was truly different, more humble, more realistic. "Son, if you've truly changed, if you're willing to work honestly, I can help you with advice. But I won't put any money into your business. At least not yet." "I understand, Mom. I just want your blessing and your advice. I can achieve the rest through my own efforts." Over the next few months, I watched Carlos set up his small bakery. He had truly changed. He worked hard, woke up at 4 in the morning, treated his suppliers with respect, and paid his bills on time. The bakery was much smaller than my business, but he was proud of what he was building with his own hands. "Mom," he said to me one day, "I understand now the value of honest work. In prison, I learned that easy money doesn't exist. Everything has a price." "And what price did you pay, Carlos?" "I lost my freedom, my dignity, and I almost lost my mother's love. It was the highest price anyone can pay." That day, I felt my son had truly returned. Not the irresponsible Carlos of before, but a mature man who had learned from his mistakes. 6 months later, when I saw that he was truly committed to change, I decided to help him financially expand the bakery. "Carlos, I want to make an investment in your business. But with very clear conditions." "What conditions, Mom?" "First, you remain responsible for everything. I'm just an investor, not an operating partner. Second, any major decision requires my approval. Third, if you go back to your wrong ways, I'll withdraw my money immediately." He accepted all the conditions without hesitation. That Christmas, I hosted a dinner at my house. It was the first time in over 4 years that the whole family was together. Maria Jose and her husband and children were present, João Pedro, who came especially from the south, and Carlos. During the dinner, Carlos asked to speak. "I wanted to apologize to all of you, but especially to my mother, for what I did. I destroyed our family, caused unnecessary suffering, and almost lost the most important people in my life." Everyone was silent, listening. "But I also want to thank, especially my mother, for not giving up on me. Even when I didn't deserve it, she continued to love me. And what's more, she showed me what it means to start over, what it means to have dignity, what it means to trust in God." Maria Jose cried. João Pedro was moved. And I felt my family was finally healed. "Carlos," I said, "a mother never gives up on a child. Even when the child gives up on himself." Today, 5 years after losing everything, I can say I've experienced a true miracle. My candy business has grown so much that I now supply 3 supermarket chains and over 50 event companies. I have 12 employees and a monthly turnover I never imagined possible at my age. Carlos managed to expand his bakery and now has 3 locations in his neighborhood. He remarried and gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren. We maintain a respectful and loving relationship, but one based on truth and transparency. Maria Jose moved to Sao Paulo and now works with me managing the business. João Pedro also returned and opened a branch of my company in his city. But the greatest miracle wasn't financial success or family reconciliation. The greatest miracle was discovering that, at 68, I was still capable of starting over, of learning, of growing. Helena remains my business partner and has become one of my best friends. Dona Joaquina, who welcomed me during my most difficult times, now lives in a small house I bought for her next door. Father Jose continues to celebrate the masses I attend daily, and he always reminds me that my story is a testament to God's love. I want to end this story with a message for everyone going through difficult times. 5 years ago, I was sleeping in a dingy boarding house, selling sweets on the street, abandoned by my own son, without hope, without prospects. If anyone had told me back then that I would become a successful small business owner, that I would get my home back, that I would have my family back, I wouldn't have believed them. But Our Lady had other plans for me. I learned that miracles don't always happen the way we expect. Sometimes, the miracle isn't having our problems magically solved. Sometimes, the miracle is receiving the strength to solve our own problems. I learned that faith doesn't protect us from life's storms, but it gives us the strength to weather them. I learned that it's never too late to start over, we're never too old to dream, we're never too alone to move forward. And I learned, above all, that a mother's love is capable of forgiving even the unforgivable, and that Our Lady's love for us is even greater than that of any earthly mother. If you are going through difficulties, don't give up. If you feel abandoned, remember that Our Lady never abandons her children. If you have lost everything, remember that it is always possible to begin again. Your story may seem like an end today, but it could be just the beginning of a new, even more beautiful chapter. Have faith. Our Lady is watching over you, even when it seems all is lost. If this testimony touched your heart and strengthened your faith, share it with others who need hope. And subscribe to the channel to continue following real stories of miracles and transformation through faith in Our Lady. May Our Lady of Aparecida bless you all and your families. Amen.